Well, hey, Maddy, thanks for joining me today on the Gym Growth Tactics podcast, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to introduce your guests on your podcast.
You got to do that.
And, for those two people that will listen to this.
My mom will probably listen.
Yeah, for Maddy's mom and my mom, Ellen, who they know each other now.
They're besties.
Yeah. Is your mom's name Natalie? Or
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there we go. For Natalie and Ellen, we know the Maddy Forberg story. We've heard it many times on many different podcasts. Today, I wanted to dive into more on the business side and a little bit on the social media side too, with your growth there. But the point of today, if you guys want to learn Maddy's story, go listen to all of her other podcasts that she's been on. She's awesome. She's competed on the world stage for powerlifting and is now doing bodybuilding as well and crushing life, but also runs her own coaching company called Strong for Life Co. And so I've been lucky to be a part of that in a coaching capacity with helping her grow her business. And it's been really cool to watch her growth over the last couple of years and to get to know her a lot more. So I think she's got a cool story to tell. So Maddy, first thing I want to talk to you about was, when did you start growing your following on social media? When did that happen?
Yeah. So for me, it was never truly intentional for it to be like, this is my brand. I started using Instagram as a kind of training journal, like a lot of people did in the beginning of, not the beginning of powerlifting, but that kind of era that you and I started in. I was just using social media to upload my mediocre bench videos and be able to track them a little bit, and realize that you can connect with the powerlifting world, from your phone, from this handheld device, and you could connect with other lifters and learn from them. So it was never intentional in the beginning to make it this kind of platform that I would speak about anything on. But I also kind of realized that a lot of powerlifters struggle with the same issues, that we all kind of have some degree of mental health issues. So that's when I kind of started to put my story out there. And it wasn't until a while later that I started to try and monetize it or make it something really intentional.
When did things start picking up traction for you? Like, when did you notice just like the growth on the Instagram side? Was it surprising? What was that like?
Early stages, yes, it was pretty surprising. Being new to lifting in general, I didn't know if I was doing anything well, if I was strong. I didn't really have any context other than like the people I trained with, and most of them were guys. So anything that I was doing was kind of cool, but I'm just a girl. So when I started competing and doing pretty well in competitions, things started to pick up for me on social media. And I had met some other lifters who were bigger on social media. Like the second powerlifting meet I ever did, I met Bonnie there. And that was the first experience that I ever had where I was like, oh, I know you from the internet. Like that's how we kind of connected in real life. So things started to pick up after I started to compete. And I just started to be open on my social media about who I was. And I was just honest about powerlifting and not being afraid of not being good at it. And I think people really appreciated seeing the like authentic side of that. Plus, I was a student at the time. I was in college, I was in nursing school. So I was posting a lot about the reality of being a student and trying to manage a training schedule. So things started to pick up there from competing, and just kind of took off until eventually I did that brute strength series. By then I had
with was that with Dana Lynn Bailey, Matty Rogers, like that thing?
Yes, that's okay. That one. So I had some sponsors before then, and through sponsorships and things like that, you do get recognized. I had been in the Power magazine, Mark Bell's Power magazine, and did some podcasts and interviews there. And then everything kind of just catapulted after I did the brute strength series. Got you.
And what was that like? Because, I've never been social media famous. Like, I've always been, I get hit up a lot and stuff, but like, I can't imagine it's something that is easy to deal with. You're getting hit up a lot. You're getting a ton of DMs. You're probably never able to answer all your notifications and stuff. I mean, talk me through a little bit what that's like on your end, just like even with your phone and maybe even the anxiety that comes with that.
It can definitely be very anxiety inducing, especially if you're somebody who needs to get through every kind of notification. As you've seen, I'm notoriously not the most organized person. So I, kind of went through the social media stuff in the same way where, messages get lost, and it was kind of overwhelming to think like, oh, I'm missing kind of opportunities or connections because my phone is just so messy. But right now through many years of practice with it, I've been able to create kind of a healthy boundary with my phone. But in the beginning, it wasn't so easy, especially because you do have that kind of mentality of, if I'm not responding right now, if I'm not immediately here, I'm going to be missing out on something. Same goes for, sponsorship deals, which I know that that's something that we'll talk about. But yeah, it was definitely complicated in the beginning because I wanted to connect and reach everybody. I wanted to respond to every comment. And I think it goes in waves of how you look at social media and what your relationship is to your phone. Now, when I'm distant from my phone emotionally, I feel like social media goes the best for me. And when I'm really intentional and like really stressed about social media, I feel like everything kind of goes in a really poor way. But I do think that is kind of reflected in the content that you're creating too. Like, I think when I'm super strict about content and I have this like rigid mindset of like, oh, I have to do this thing, I feel that my content is doing really poor. Like, I think it comes across that it's not as genuine and it's more of something I'm just putting out there to put out.
Yeah. My favorite thing is when you'll post something, you'd be like you post something the other day, it's like, the sound doesn't work, but I'm trying my best. So please, like, it's just being like, this is real. Like,
yeah,
trying my best. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people will message me and be like, hey, I don't know who runs this account, but this question's for Maddy. And I'm like, man, it's just me. Like, yeah. I don't know who you think I am, but it is just me. And so I don't know. People have a lot of expectations that it has to be perfect, like that reel in particular that, I had deleted it once because the sound didn't go up, and then it happened a second time. And I'm like, I'm not going to sit here all day and like ruminate on this one thing not working. Like, I'm just going to post it and go, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's tough too, like with content calendars. And it's something I even struggled with this business. And I was creating a bunch of content and it was good stuff and it was doing well. But you get to a point where you just get burnout. Like, you get content burnout, and when it's forced, it isn't as good. And because you don't enjoy it as much. And so the quality just can't be great. And that's, I think, a balance that a lot of us always try to find is, where's the balance between we're putting out stuff that we enjoy and we're also putting out stuff that like people want to see. Because at the end of the day, if you do have a following and you're trying to build a business, you are there to serve the people that are watching. And that's right. It's hard. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. So for you, what did like sponsorship opportunities look like in the beginning? Like, who hit you up first? How did you know what to say yes to, what to say no to? Take me through a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was really tricky because this was kind of the beginning of the influencer world as far as social media. Not a lot of people in my circle were doing anything with sponsorships because it was so new. So that was a really tricky one to navigate. I was getting these opportunities and people were like, oh, we'll just send you this stuff for free if you'll post about it. And in the beginning, that was fine for me. And I do think that we can kind of get greedy in the society. Nowadays, I think a lot of people want to be paid and they don't really, I don't want to say don't deserve to be paid, but I think like there are steps and there's levels to certain things. So I was approached by a supplement company. I don't know if they even exist anymore, but they approached me and they're like, do you want to try our products out? We'd be interested in sponsoring you. And that was the first sponsorship that I ever really considered. I asked them like, cool, can you send me stuff? I'd like to try it first. I do think it's really important that we're trying the products that were being offered before agreeing to any kind of contract, because you could hate this and that would really suck to hate something and have to represent it. So they sent me a package and their kind of deal was, if you post like X amount, we'll give you this amount of allotment, or like $300 a month, or like 4 products, or whatever kind of situation that would look like. And that was for free. It was just an exchange of like, post as many times, so on.
Yeah. And you went ahead and did that. And then did you get like a lot of one-off deals like that? Or what did that look like?
That one was kind of an ongoing sponsorship. I can't remember the term length, but that was definitely something that was maybe 6 months to a year. At that same time, I had companies that were reaching out to me that were interested, whether that be apparel or more supplement companies. And at that time, it was, very exciting, but pretty overwhelming to think like, oh, am I missing out on this opportunity because I'm going this way? And, this is so new. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm, a little bit in over my head, but I was preferring to go towards the companies that I felt like I had a more friendly relationship with. which isn't always the best idea. And it isn't always the most necessary to be friendly with the people that you're working with. That, it's not a requirement, but to me, it was important that I could communicate with them person to person. And I kind of strayed from that in some more deals later on and realized you need to go back to that because it is something that's valuable to me. And we can talk about that later, but being able to communicate with like the owners or, somebody that is responsible for your contract and taking care of you is important. You have to have a good relationship there. So I was maintaining that kind of sponsorship. I was working with an apparel company. They don't really exist anymore, but that wasn't a concrete thing. It was just like, hey, if you want to wear our shirts, we'll send you some things. You can get like a 10% off kind of code. And yeah, so it wasn't for a while that I had a paid sponsorship. Probably the first 2 years of doing kind of influencer deals were more unpaid and just kind of exchanges.
Do you think looking back though, you could have probably asked to be paid? You just didn't know that was an option or you didn't know how to negotiate yet?
Definitely. Yeah. And I didn't think that I had any value because who am I? I'm just this girl who started powerlifting. Maybe I had like 10,000 followers. But again, if I could go back and give myself, some advice, I would have asked for payment earlier for sure.
Yeah. I think working like on the business side with other influencers like myself, I've realized a lot of people just don't understand how much they're worth when it comes to their reach. Now, don't get me wrong, like you might have an audience and someone might think their audience is one group of people and then, someone sponsors them or they try to start their own company and then that group of people is just not interested at all in what they're selling and it does poorly. But if you know how to monetize your audience, it can do really well. And a lot of these companies, I think, take advantage of influencers that don't understand their value. And I know, I think you've been in a situation like that where did you feel taken advantage of in some way by some of these companies or individuals?
Absolutely. So that first supplement company that I worked with, like I said, I don't think that they even exist anymore. They were asking me, fuck you. They were asking me to do a lot and they were never on time with the supplements. I was always out, but they were asking me to create content and they weren't even like sold in stores at the time. So it was like, I can't create all these things and follow these requirements that you're asking of me when I don't have the products and I'm not even getting commission or you're late on the commission. And it was just turning into this really messy situation. And it felt like if they can't even manage the business, like there's no reason for me to be involved. If you can't manage the business and you can't manage athletes, there's no way that we're having a lot of synergy here. So I definitely felt out of the loop, which I've come to realize that feeling out of the loop is a red flag in sponsorships. Like you don't have to really have a true seat at the table when it comes to like a business, when it comes like sponsorships, but in your contract and in your relationships, that is really important. So for me, I kind of definitely took some time to learn from that. And I did realize my value. Eventually I had left that company because that was around the time that I got an offer from Redcon. So I started working with Redcon after that. And they were a big company who had a lot more opportunities for me. And that was in unpaid sponsorship as well. But they had a lot more to offer me in terms of like media, photos, trips. I think maybe there were competition bonuses and things like that. But there was a lot more growth like opportunities, especially social media wise. And because they also did conventions and things like that, that was something that could I have gotten paid at that time? Yes, absolutely. And I just didn't argue for it. But in my mind, the ability to have, access to these kind of opportunities and conversations with these people, that was payment enough for me at that time.
Yeah. And do you feel like that helped you quite a bit, like in your growth and like what were some of the things you got out of that situation?
Absolutely. I learned a lot out of working with that company. Eventually I had moved to Florida where their home base was and I was working in office and I was able to actually work with their marketing team, like just working in-house separate from being an athlete for them. And I learned a lot. They're a huge company and they've done really well. So being able to sit in on marketing meetings for a huge company like that was really valuable. But I was able to like go to the Olympia or go to the Arnold, or I had my meets paid for. And at the time that was really important to me because I was going through nursing school. I was working like was doing clinicals, 2 jobs and training. Like my schedule was insane. So to be able to have my competitions paid for was everything. Otherwise, it would have been really hard for me to compete at that time.
Yeah. When did you realize that you probably would be better off not doing nursing as a career and could actually monetize, what you had going on with social media and powerlifting and whatnot?
It took until my last year of nursing school. I really love nursing. The reason I got into it, and again, if you want to know my story, there's a million podcasts that you can listen to about that, but I just wanted to help people. I had seen how well the nurses took care of my sister in a really bad situation, and I wanted to be able to provide that for people. I've always wanted to connect with people and be a resource. And I realized that you can get that in a lot of different ways. You can help people, and it doesn't have to be in like a clinical setting. And I really struggled with being on my feet all day. Like, props to nurses, because it's a really hard job. Not that it's not something that I can turn to, or if I wanted to pursue, I could still do that. But I realized that, hey, I have something here in powerlifting, and it's a passion of mine. And with me being such an ADHD heavy person, it's important for us to follow our passions, because that's how we work. Like, we get so burnt out if we're doing anything that we're not totally excited about. And so I realized, like, I am consuming my entire life with the sport. I might as well try and find a way to monetize that. And I got certified and mentored and eventually started coaching, but that didn't happen for a while. And I didn't really start doing that until after I graduated, or just before I graduated.
Yeah, it's funny because I know if you get DMs all the time, like, did you graduate from nursing school? Why aren't you a nurse? Like this, like people are angry.
People are really mad about it.
Yeah, they're really mad Maddie's not a nurse.
Yeah.
And
like, do you still have your degree? I'm like, no, I fucking threw it away.
Yeah. It's on.
They revoked it.
They revoked it. Once I chose powerlifting, it was done. The nurses,
they were like,
they circled me, and yeah. But you serve so many more people in so many positive ways, like with what you're doing. And it's first of all, you have so much more impact. It's what you're passionate about. I mean, why wouldn't you? And I think there's nothing wrong with, man, people get so tripped up in like, you started on a path, well, you have to choose that path or whatever it is. And nursing's a very noble career, right? But you found other ways to serve the world and ways that bring you value and make you feel good and have purpose. And that's all we want, right? Like, that's all that matters.
Yeah. And that's the kind of conversations that I had to have with myself, because it was really frustrating. For one, how many thousands of dollars am I in like student debt right now? But 2, it was like, okay, what am I trying to accomplish here? Like, what is the thing that I really like out of whatever I'm doing right now? What do I care about? I care about helping people. I care about people being healthy. Like, I care about being able to have an impact on people's well-being. What avenues can I get that in? Like, that doesn't just put you in this box of nursing or the medical field, because maybe I could, be a therapist. Maybe this is a different route that I want to take or would take eventually, or something else. But like, the tenets of what I want to do revolve around health, helping people, well-being. And I can get that in powerlifting, a sport that I'm already heavily involved in and really enjoy and am passionate about. So it was definitely a jump, and I had no idea if I was going to make money. It was really scary, especially because I started coaching on my own. And then, as you know, I worked for another company, and it took a lot of courage to do that on my own. Not everybody is meant to start their own business, but I think, a lot of people can if they have the courage to do that. And it might not work. There's no problem with that.
Like, yeah, you can always decide, all right, I'm going to go be a nurse. Like, I just know so many people that have done nursing, look, even later in life, they had to go to school to finish or whatever it was. And that's the thing, is like, my thing, literally, if my shit didn't work out with the gym, like, I was like, I could just probably go sell cars. Like, I could sell anything. So I might as well sell cars. Like, yeah. And like, cars are sick. Cool. It's all good. There's nothing wrong with finding another path later if it doesn't work out. So along the way, so you still run your own account. Do you find that a lot of people with, where you're at still run their own accounts? Is like a normal thing, or no?
I do think so. Yeah. I actually don't know a lot of people whose accounts are ran by somebody else. I think that's really just something reserved for big celebrities, maybe their like content is scheduled out through like a third party. But I think for the most part, these like C-list celebrity people that we're kind of referring to run their own accounts.
Got you. And do a lot of them have managers, or they negotiate their own deals, or how does that work? And have you ever had a manager?
I don't think that enough people have managers. I think people can really benefit from it, but I also think that, like with everything you and I talk about, being able to like have that self-governance is important as well. To know what you're talking about, to know what's going on is really important. I had a manager for brand deals for a couple of reasons. The person that was my manager had been a friend of mine who was really interested in starting this. She was really savvy with, kind of bargaining with people and having these kind of conversations. And that was a field where I felt really insecure and vulnerable. I didn't feel confident in that arena, but I knew that I could be making more money out of these companies if I had somebody, or if I had the ability to argue that a little bit better. Since it wasn't a strength of mine and my friend had been giving me so much advice, eventually she was like, I'm really interested in starting to manage people. Like, what do you think about it? Let's try it out for a couple of deals. And we got a couple of like low-hanging fruit deals, and that was really exciting. And then we moved on to some bigger things like supplement sponsors and, skincare or whatever. And I thought that was really cool. What I neglected, and this is more of it's a personal as well as business lesson, is don't just let go of control completely, because I had put so much trust in this person and just had so much weight in this idea that, oh, they know. So like, I don't need to micromanage anything. Like, they've got it covered. I'll know when there's a problem. I'll just ask like weekly, is everything okay? Like, can we just check in every week about how things are going? But I wasn't logging into the accounts. In fact, I didn't really have access to all the accounts. And I didn't realize like how much money this person was taking out of the deals. And again, I found out later that this person had told other people, well, don't tell Maddy, but your deals are different. And like, I'm getting this much more percent out of it than you are. So like, let's keep this between us kind of situation, which, might not be super common for a lot of people. So that might not be relatable, but it is something to watch out for, because you want that stuff to be explicitly clear. Like, you need to know every part of that, even if it is a friend. I don't really recommend working with friends like that, especially with your money, but that was a lesson learned. I would consider having a manager in the future, just because it's something where like, if I can delegate this to you and I can make money from it and work with brands that I like, great. I would prefer that to be somebody who has a reputation doing this, instead of kind of just taking a chance on somebody that I know.
Yeah, I think that's what's tough. I mean, when we mesh friends, family, and money, it's usually a toxic situation. But also, like, at the same time, you were young, naive. I mean, I had a similar situation. I started my gym with two individuals, one of which had what I thought was a successful business, and you found out later it wasn't, and I was being used. Got out of that situation on top, which was great. But I think a lot of times, we don't know what we don't know, but we also discount like our value. Like, one of the things you've mentioned earlier is why me? Why am I important? Like, kind of in the beginning of this conversation. And I know you've had a little of those things on the way, but it's hard to feel like you can do it on your own. And so then you're easily taken advantage of, because someone who's maybe older or has more experience comes in and says, oh, I'll help you. But they're not usually altruistic in their endeavors. So that can be it can be easy to be taken advantage of. And I think I've seen that a lot too. Just like, I even have an individual on my staff at the gym who's growing as an influencer, and she gets reached out to by companies. And luckily, I mean, she talks to me, and I try to give her advice and stuff, but I don't know everything, about these deals or what to recommend. So I think it's just important to, number one, right, understand your value. Number two, understand who you're working with. And if you want someone to help you, like, make sure they have a track record, maybe talk to some other people they've worked with and get feedback that way, and just do your due diligence, and don't just blindly trust just because they are, a friend of a friend or a friend or a family or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people also are afraid of feeling stupid when it comes to money, and that pride can stop people from asking questions. And in this scenario, even if you feel stupid, I think asking like, hey, I don't know what this means in the contract. Can you explain it to me? Like,
Yeah.
just put them, in front. Ask the question. Say, hey, I know that you need to be making money out of the situation. Can you explain what you're getting out of this so that I can better understand? Because in the end, nobody's doing anything for free. And we need to know that and be okay with that and know that the other person or whatever is also trying to get an income from that. And that's fine. We can't have bad feelings about that. Nobody should work for free. But I think being clear in your communication is important. It's not something where you need to just be like, well, they're my friend, I don't really want to know. Just say like, hey, like, I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable in what you're receiving out of this deal. Can you explain to me, your side of things? What's your benefit here? And what are you looking to do? What are you looking to make? Let's make sure that makes sense for like our margins or whatever. Yeah. I think that kind of conversation is important.
Yeah, clear, defined in writing, and ask what you don't know. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's the only way you'll learn the term and what this means. And yeah, the whole like, don't ask the question because you don't want to feel dumb. It brings me back to like being in the classroom. The teacher's always like, might as well ask the question because someone else is just too afraid to ask and they're going to learn too. And no questions are dumb questions. So that same for business. So one of the things that you've done that I think a lot of people don't do is start their own business, like real business. Like it's very easy. Just let's say, get a bunch of brand deals and live the influencer life and go to Tulum and go lift and post and cash the checks. But you've decided, no, like I want to start my own thing. Take me through that thought process of why did you want to start your own business with Strong for Life Co. and what that journey has been like.
So I went from coaching on my own, pretty small scale. I didn't know anything about business. I just knew I wanted to coach people. I wanted to interact with people who wanted to get stronger. Then I met Chad Wesley Smith, who, if you don't know who he is, he's a wonderful person. Not you. I know that you know who he is, but people listening.
A few people, our moms listening to this.
Our moms listening. Yeah. So I met Chad and I asked Chad to coach me and he started coaching me and I became an athlete of Juggernaut. And then they hired me as a coach. I was mentoring under Chad, but then I also started working for them as like a brand manager, so on and so forth. And I worked with them for a couple of years and I learned a lot, but they started to bring in the AI program and that was really exciting. And a lot of focus was going into that instead of one-to-one coaching. And I'm not talking shit about Chad or anything. They made a great product with their AI. They've made a ton of money from it. And it's something that they are really confident in. And I think it's a great option. But for me, my business was one-to-one coaching. And if that's not getting the attention that it needs or that I felt it needed at the time, I also knew maybe I could do a bit better. Maybe I could do things on my own. I knew that I had a good reach. And of course, when you're working for another company, the other person has to make money, like we said. So there's going to be a split. It was never anything that I asked or tried to negotiate. So, I'll just say that it was fine as it was because I didn't argue it. I could have potentially made that split different. I could have had that conversation. But in my mind, I felt like it was really great and I learned what I needed to. But I was at a certain point in my life where I feel like it's a dream of mine to bring on coaches to work for me, to have my own thing, to, I don't think that I'll ever have like an AI type of program, but I think that I could create a group of really good coaches who care about people. And I think like that would just fulfill me to have a team of my own and do it the way that I think it should be done. So I learned a lot out of that situation, but it was just the right timing for me. And that's when you and I started talking and you kind of helped give me the courage and help me create the steps to get there. So I worked for that company and learned a lot, but ultimately realized I have my own reach. People are really asking to work with me. And I know that I could probably do pretty well if I just decided to take the jump.
Yeah, I think one-on-one coaching, solo coaches, right? That it's just them. Yeah, they have a company, but it's just them. It's really a solo endeavor. And personally, like I never felt the fulfillment that I get being a team leader and working with people like my team. I never felt as fulfilled just doing it on my own. I felt fulfillment in working with clients, and that was awesome. But it can be a lonely endeavor. Like one of my good friends is a day trader and he's like, man, like I make good money, but I'm very alone. Like there's no one I'm impacting. So he wants to help coach people to do it, which I think is a great idea. And I've been talking with him about building something out. But yeah, it can be a very lonely endeavor. And so then building the team, I think, is a whole different animal. So I think a lot of, like, you have a reach, right? And I think a lot of people in the industry that have a reach, that they think, oh, cool, yeah, I'll just start this thing and then it'll just blow up. Obviously, that is not the case. Like, there's more work that needs to be done. What were some of the realizations that you had once you realized that you didn't, obviously you had enough reach to fill your roster, but when it came to then building beyond that, what were some of the roadblocks and things that you ran into as you started doing it with a team?
So I knew that I wanted to have a team because it would be great to give very deserving people some big opportunities. I'll be the first to say I'm not the best coach in the world, but I'm constantly working on it. It's something that I think is valuable. And I also know that there are a lot of people out there that just because maybe they don't have the reach or the platform or they're not social media savvy, people aren't able to benefit from their services in the same way they are from mine. So hiring people was something that I enjoyed, but it was very complicated because I really like people. I'm somebody that has, there's a term for it, we've talked about it and I'm blanking, but like paralysis by analysis, where I'm like, well, this person's great and this person's great, but what do I need? And so that was a difficult part of the hiring process, just like from the first step of kind of figuring out who was going to mesh well. I also wanted to make sure that these people weren't just intelligent, that they were people that knew how to program. So, that was part of their second interview process, was creating a program, going over it with me and those kind of things. But I also needed to make sure that we meshed well, that we had similar personalities and that I could understand their motives for what they do, like what drives them. So I had them take the Enneagram test. I think the Enneagram test is really valuable. And for one, it lets me know the other person, but two, it gives them a task that they can just blow off. And I think that says a lot about a person if they're willing to take the time to do this simple thing. And I hired 3 people and they were great. But then a couple months in, we get through the onboarding process. Our coaches are getting clients. They're building their rosters. It's great. And one of our coaches was offered another opportunity. So this is something that I will never talk poorly against. I think I want my coaches to have opportunities. I want them to make as much money as possible. I want them to get opportunities and come to me to counter them. Like that's a part of life and you deserve to do that. You are not stuck. You're not just, locked down in this position. But that was something that was really unexpected of, wow, I just hired this person. I went through this whole process of hiring people and onboarding and, getting clients for this person. And then after 2-3 months, they're gone and I'm stuck here again in this kind of catastrophic position.
And this individual, like, they didn't have any red flags or anything in the process, right? Like they were pretty on it, right?
No, this person was great. He was a great coach. He came highly recommended. He was just very green. And that was something that, when you and I were talking about hiring, that was important. I wanted somebody that was newer, not out of like naivety, but more of, we can build together. We can create a process that, sounds great for all of us. We can all be on board. We're not breaking down, really bad habits. And this person came highly recommended. It was just that they, didn't really have a client load. But unfortunately, and fortunately, I suppose, once we got them some clients, I think maybe the other company saw how well that they could do and that they had so much potential and wanted them. And for the coach that I had hired, that was kind of their dream, was to work for this company. And it's not my place to stop you from your dreams. So while I had to pivot, and that's, hard, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. And we were able to find somebody that was a better fit anyway.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, and I know you and I have talked about this greatly, but one of the reasons I think a lot of online coaching companies struggle and there's a lot of coach turnover is this. And it's people bring on coaches that are already established coaches. Hey, come coach for my company. Then the owner skims off the top, but doesn't really provide any extra value. The trade needs to be value. So like my team at SoCal Powerlifting, the value is, look, all you need to do is coach. We do the rest. So we'll sell for you. We will give you the softwares and cover all the costs that you have to coach. All you need to do is do the thing that you love to do. And hey, if you want to do more than just coach, there's other opportunities within the organization you can take on. But I've seen so many coaching companies we've been in this game I've been in this game for almost a decade now, like seeing all the companies and stuff. they pop up, coaches come and go, there's tons of turnover, coach leaves, starts his own company. It's just because the guy at the top is usually just, the guy or gal at the top is usually just someone that's a good coach. It's like, how can I make more money? And it's not like, it doesn't go, how can I provide more value to others? And that's the difference, is by bringing on someone that's newer, mentoring them, someone who's more green, bringing them up, giving them the opportunity to be in front of people that maybe they wouldn't have had on their own, or they're years away from if they pursue this thing. You're giving them a platform to do the thing that they love to do, because there's a book about this. It's called The E-Myth. And it's all about I think it stands for entrepreneur myth. It's that people think that if let's say if you're a plumber for a plumbing company, you start doing the math, you're like, well, I could just do this on my own. What if I was just the plumber and I worked all the other jobs? But if you're just a coach, like if you're an online coach, and you don't work for a company, you're an entrepreneur. You have to do wear all the hats, and not everyone is meant for that path. And there's nothing wrong with that either. There are people out there like people, me and you, that are more into the entrepreneurial side, and we have the ADHD and we love to dive deep on things. And I want to help my team grow in where I'm most valuable, which is I want to grow the organization so I can make all the ships rise as well. It is very, very hard to build a legit coaching roster from scratch if you are new, if you are green. I was lucky because I did it kind of grassroots in the brick and mortar space, and I also, was working at Juggernaut and stuff. But it's a very difficult path, and so that's why I think you've had a lot of success. As to the conversations we've had, is provide as much value, home run on value, and communicate. Whereas I think most companies don't do that.
Yeah, and that was a big learning curve with us when we started in the hiring process, because I know that I came to you with a couple people where I was like, oh, they've got a really good following. They're really good with their content. They're really good with their social media. They make these, informational posts, and they're really clean, and, they're Canva pros and whatever. And you kind of drove home to me, that's something that you provide. They don't have to be good at content. They have to be good at coaching. And that's what I think is a really big part of that, value that you're talking about. What do we bring to the table? As you said, a lot of people do want to go off just because they're coaches and they feel like they should just branch off and do their own thing. And while I encourage that for the right kind of person, it's not super easy. Like you're saying, there's so many different hats that you have to wear. And that was a big learning curve. And thankfully, that's something that I'm interested in. I'm interested in being a leader. I'm interested in learning about business and dealing with IT problems and email issues and customer service and doing all these things, because once you grow the business and you have, a greater client load, you're going to have more customer service. You have to be the go-to person for all of these people. It's not just cool, I'll make a post and train a client and no problem. And that was something that, I had to learn too with my coaches, with us talking and through this process of, oh, I want my coaches to post more content. And you're like, pay them for it. That has to be, I make the content for them. That's my role. And if I want them to do more, just like any job, I'll increase your income for that. Yeah.
Again, same thing, go back to the plumber analogy. It's not like the owner of the plumbing company tells his plumber, hey man, I need you to go stand on the corner and sell yourself. No, that's the owner's job, and the company's job is to market for the plumber. The same goes for the coach. And that, I think, is the misconception in the coaching industry, is that we want our coaches to fend for themselves, but then what is the value of the company? There is none.
Yeah. And I think the whole mantra or saying of nobody's going to work for your dreams the same way that you will is a really good reminder, because it is easy to get frustrated when you're building out a team and thinking or expecting that everybody else is going to give their all for it just because they believe in the mission. And while I think it's important that the people who work for you believe in what you're trying to accomplish, they're not just doing that just because they like you. And that's not fair to expect that either. Nobody's going to work for your dreams to the extent that you will. And, you need to respect people for that reason too.
Exactly. And the other thing too is what I relate to is you have to build your company big enough to fit other people's dreams within it. Mm-hmm. And that takes time too. That we're expanding our gym now for a third time, and it's because I know we need to get to X amount. We need to be doing $200K a month if I want to have people making six figures in my business. So It's just you got to grow and provide value and put people where they're strongest. You can't make content creators out of coaches. You can't make coaches out of content creators. You can't expect them to wear every single hat. They're not the entrepreneur you are, and you, whoever's listening to this, are moms, and that's pretty much the gist. Real quick, I wanted to touch on too your transition from powerlifting to bodybuilding, but from the business standpoint. So, was there any realization there, and was there a struggle like with you? And I even know with bodybuilding and like jiu-jitsu, like transitioning and doing those things. I know your business, obviously, your social media does well. Like when you're in prep, you look shredded, you're jacked, right? What happened when you went from powerlifting to bodybuilding? And then what are some of the struggles you have today, even with the bodybuilding? And I know, for you, it's like you can't always be shredded year round. Like what is that like?
Yeah, it was hard more from an identity standpoint to transition from powerlifting to bodybuilding, because I had put so much of my value in my ability to lift weights, of like how good I did at competitions. And also I had a lot of doubts because this is where people knew me from. This is the reason that people followed me or whatever, is because I specifically was good at squat, bench, deadlift, when that's never really been the case. I think people followed me because, that was part of the reason, but also for what I was providing, my personality, the experience that I was kind of relating. And I kind of forgot that in the beginning, but I just kind of took a jump on like, hopefully these people will see what I'm trying to do and they'll relate to it. A big reason why I stopped powerlifting was because, one, I was injured, but two, that sport did so much for me mentally. It saved my life. And I was getting really burnt out with it because I was injured. I was just getting sick of it. You've experienced it too. It's very monotonous training. It's over and over and over. And for so many years, I had been doing that without any real change. And I had stopped really seeing progress because of my injury, where I needed to do something different. And so in order to preserve my love for the sport, it was important for me to find something else to do in the meantime. And I've really fallen in love with that. So transitioning my brand from one to the other, it was frustrating and kind of confusing to try and push both things, to try and push strength training while that's not even my focus anymore. And it really just kind of relied on me bunkering down on the value that I provided, that this is something that I'm good at doing. I'm not in strength sports because I'm not good at it, or not because I think it's important, but because, this is out of a personal necessity to switch gears. Definitely, like you're saying, the image is a big part of, it's the whole part of bodybuilding really is how you look, unfortunately, but that's what it is. And my products, my posts, everything does better when I'm leaner, and people will say that. People will say either one. They'll say, I liked you better this way. You need to get leaner. And I'm like, okay. I've learned to really not put too much of my own self-worth into what people think on social media, and more so, am I providing what I think to be important and helpful? And I think that I'm doing that regardless of the sport. Am I encouraging people to move their body? Am I encouraging people to be healthy? These are still the tenets that I can go back to when I first had that conversation with myself of what am I really trying to accomplish? Because again, like we said earlier, it doesn't really matter what specifically that looks like. Those are the things that ring true to me. So I'll be able to do that forever, because that's what I'm set out to do. I think people really need to kind of boil it down to, what am I trying to accomplish? You don't have to have the whole thing figured out, but knowing that you want to help people, that it has to be surrounding health or, any of these kind of variables, I think you can not have burnout if you stick to those things. You can continue to switch gears as long as it's in these realms, or it's, according to those tenets that you set for yourself.
Yeah. And obviously you're probably not going to do bodybuilding forever. And I know you did start doing jiu-jitsu, and that's been really fun. Have you thought about that next phase of life? When you do have to transition, because my thought is first of all, we all get old, wrinkly, and ugly. So we can't all be, the face of our company. For me, I don't know. I think half the people that go to my gym don't even know I own the freaking thing, which it needs to stand on its own 2 feet. But
yeah,
that transition, right? One day, if it's injury, whatever it is, have you thought about what that looks like long term? What you want to get into, how you want to be known?
Yeah. Again, through it all, I want to be known as somebody who made people feel empowered, that, that their mental health was really an important journey to be on, that it, correlates with their health, that these things are not separate. And I kind of want that to be my legacy, that people realize the importance of their mental health along with their health, whatever that looks like, jiu-jitsu, powerlifting, bodybuilding. Sport-wise, for me, bodybuilding is not going to be forever. I can barely do it right now. Like my liver, my cortisol is not great. So I know that, there is a timestamp, like everything. This is just the thing that I enjoy right now, but I know that moving my body is the important thing. So I've even had conversations with my coach about maybe after this next show, I'll do another powerlifting meet because I don't think I'm done there. But I am also really interested in competing in jiu-jitsu. I'm also really interested in doing an Ironman. Like I think it'd be awesome to have that kind of training schedule where like you wake up, go for a run, go for a swim. Then tomorrow you go for a bike ride. Like I think being able to have that variety is really cool. And I don't want to be good at it, but that's another way for me to kind of like show my audience, you don't have to find one thing. Like training is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to excite you. It can be different. Beyond that, I know that I want to start a family. And I think I'm currently in a pregnancy and postpartum coaching course right now, because that's a goal of mine, is to be able to help women through that, because I don't think that we have enough resources for pregnant and postpartum women in the fitness world. We just tell them like, or we see a video of a pregnant woman squatting and we're like, holy shit, is she going to give birth right now? And you're like, this bitch is the strongest person you probably know right now.
Yeah. I'm seeing like Meg Scanlon just crushing weights and like in her stomach with twins. And like,
she was squatting like 150 kilograms. You're like, damn, I can't even do that right now.
Literally. Yeah, I think it's this misconception that we have to live in a box, that you have to do one thing at a time. And well, you were this great powerlifter and now you're this bodybuilder, and like that's your definition of you. And I think for a lot of us, we let sport define us for a very long time. I know that's what I had to deal with, and with injuries and stuff, I found other identities and whatnot. But sport isn't forever. It could be taken away tomorrow. You could lose a limb and bye-bye. And so there's no reason to be in a box. And I think being on social media like you are, I'm sure a lot of people are always demanding like you do this or you do that, but it's like you don't have to do any of that. You can just do whatever the fuck you want to do, and you'll probably be successful at whatever you choose to do, because that's how you work, even if it's Fortnite.
I'm a gamer, guys.
Gamer guys. He's gonna start a streaming channel. But yeah, that's so interesting. Well, hey, dude, like I really appreciate you speaking on a lot of this stuff. The goal today was to touch on some of these things that maybe you haven't touched on. And like I said, again, for the few people listening to this, Maddy has an incredible story just of hardship, trauma, loss, and then just overcoming a lot. And so there's tons of podcasts out there where you can see how she became this amazing human. But today I really wanted to dive deeper on the business side, because I think, Maddy, you're doing some great things. You're helping a lot of people. You're finding ways to fulfillment, and that's really all that matters.
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate that. And I would love and encourage people to ask questions. Like if people want to know more about we kind of glossed over a lot of things from, social media to sponsorships to brand deals and whatever. And if people have specific questions about any of those things, I would love for us to kind of dive back in and have more of a specific kind of podcast on like how to go from like closing a contract, beginning to end. What does that look like? I think that could be really cool too. So if people are interested in that, I'd love for us to do another.